Hi friends, it's Michelle. Welcome back to my channel and welcome back to the next episode in my series about making specimen tubes, vials, test tubes, whatever. And we've already made polymer clay details with mushrooms. I've shown how to stuff the vials with beautiful items. And then we worked a little bit on using wax and twine and stickers or labels to make them look authentic. And now I want to show you what is the final product. The thought I had in my mind that started all of this months ago when I decided I wanted to do something very special with my friend's steam clay, and I was looking for an idea. This was what was in my head, and it took me this long to get to this place. So what I wanted to do was I wanted to make like a 3D diorama, something that the test tube could go into, that could hang on the wall, sit on a shelf. So what I decided to do was I needed a small wooden box. Now, I think you could use a cardboard box, so that's very attainable. I wanted to try wood. I went to the dollar store. I found this little crate, this little wooden crate for $1.25. It did not have these holes in it. I am going to actually show you how I got those holes in a moment. And I thought this will probably work. It's lightweight, hard, and will make a perfect little diorama for me. So what I ended up doing was I asked my husband if he could drill a couple of holes for me, one for the test tube to go through and another one for the test tube to rest on so it wasn't all wonky. We didn't have the exact size of the drill bit, so we had to go a little bit bigger. And truth be told, because this is such a cheaply made pressed box, it got very jagged as we cut it. Let me insert the video right here for us cutting the box. The boxes, there's actually 2 of them. So essentially all we did was measure equidistant marks or holes where we wanted our 3 test tubes to be. My husband's putting pilot holes in first because the hole bit that we purchased has this little like pin point that you put in the pilot hole. And you'll see, because it's such cheap pressed wood, it really kind of tears the box up a bit. I'm not going to worry about that too much because I'm going to be putting paper on top. And if you didn't want to use wood and drill a hole, you could always use a cardboard box and cut that hole with an X-Acto knife or a really good hole punch. There are very many ways that you could approach this project. It doesn't have to be a drilled hole. Okay, so now that you've seen that, you see that this is very rough. So what I want to do is take a pair of scissors and I want to trim off all the little pieces of wood that are sticking up. And I think what I might do is take some sandpaper and just go around and make sure everything, there's no edges. We are going to be gluing paper on this, so I think the sandpaper only being on the inside is what I need to most worry about. So as I said, I think you could definitely use a cardboard box. And it might be easier to cut the circle out and you could really customize the circle. I wanted to try wood, but certainly this is not the only material that you can use. So now I'm going to take some sandpaper and I'm just going to sand the inside of the hole and the top of the box, get anything that's jagged out of there. It doesn't need to be perfect because the paper will be on top of it. I'm not worried about splinters. I just want to make sure that all the rough spots are gone. I'll use the paper and the sanding block. And as you could see, I took quite a bit off. It really was jagged. So what I want to do is I want to punch holes that are going to be the size of my test tube right here. So that's way too big for my test tube. Let's see if I have hole punch that's a closer size. So I have this holes, and I think that is perfect. So I think what I can do is I think I can put a piece of, this is the test tube that I have decided to put in this box. And I like the red, so I think I might use a little bit of red paper on the top here. And I might put a little bit of file folder just to make this piece a little bit stronger and to hold that in place. So now I'm going to take the box and I'm going to measure two silhouettes of the top and the bottom, one of the top and the bottom. And I want this file folder to basically be a reinforcer for the holes that I cut for the test tube. That way when I'm putting the test tube in and out, it's strong enough to withstand that, and it gives a little bit more structure to the paper that I'll lay on top. You're going to notice later on this isn't that important, but at the beginning of the project, I hadn't done this before, so I really didn't realize that. And the reason why it's not important is because when I try to hole punch it, I'm going to realize I can't use a standard hole puncher to punch in the middle. You'll see it'll all make sense when it happens. So now I'm just going to cut a piece of the red paper, the same width of the top. It's going to be folded on the top of the box. And I'm going to put this reinforcer down on the middle, and I notice that the edges of this box are awfully plain and I need to paint them. If I'm going to put paint on this project, it needs to be before I glue any paper down because I am not that neat. So I'm just taking my finger. I have a little bit of ecru acrylic paint. You could use white, black, brown, whatever color you think would enhance your project. And I'm just covering the edge of this little crate because it's, it's just cheap press board and it looks kind of crappy. So I'm just doing this to make it look a little bit nicer and more finished. And because I'm a messy person and I know there's no way I could do this after I glue the paper down and not make a mess. Did you catch what I just did there? I had to wipe my desk off because I made a mess. See, this is what I mean. This is why I need to do details at the front end so I don't make messes later. Now, there is something to be said for using paint like Distress ink if you wanted to sort of make that edge go over onto the paper with some paint. That would be fine. But in my case, I'm really trying to make this as technical as I can, and I'm going to try to be neat and precise. So now I'm going to take a pencil and I'm going to trace the inside circle onto the inside of the paper. In my head, I think, yes, I'm just going to punch the hole out, right? No, because the punchers are too shallow. And now I realize that I can't do it that way. So I need to just punch a file folder and then trim it right around. And that's going to have to do as my reinforcer. And of course, I've glued this file folder on, so I'm going to have to start over with a new piece of paper. That's fine. This is how we learn, and hopefully this will help you avoid some of the mistakes I made. So I have a new piece of paper, and first of all, I try to trim the old piece of paper with my scissors to see if I can make that circle nice and neat, because I don't want to start over, but I really can't. And the writing's on the wall. I just need to start over. Sometimes you do. It's just the way it is. So I have a new piece of paper. I'm folding it in half, and I'm going to use my puncher to make a clean circle. And I'm going to try to make it as equidistant as I can and hope that I'm on target. So there it is. It's nice and clean, and now the clean reinforcer can go on the back. It's worth it to take the time, Michelle. Sometimes, if I'm trying to do something technical, I have to just do the steps. And that looks so much better. So now we're going to line it up, and look how good it looks. That was totally worth the effort. I need to retrim now because it's a new piece of paper, but that will be a very minor thing to do. It's sort of like when you get lost with GPS, right? Sometimes it's better just to get off the road, recalibrate your GPS, and take the loss. And that's what I'm doing here. I didn't realize the punching issue. Now I do, and I will know from now on. And now you know from now on too. So now I can glue this to the top of my box, and I'm going to ink it first. And my inker is a little big, so I need to use my, my finger dauber. And I just want to ink that so that the edge looks cool and distressed. And now I think I'm ready to finally glue this down on the top of my box. I will need Fabri-Tac because it's wood. I want to make sure that it's going to be staying on there for a good long time. So I'm just going to center that on the hole, and I'm going to press over the corners. And I'm not going to glue the flaps down now. I think about doing it and putting a little bit, and then I realize, you know what, I'm going to put other papers under there, so let's just leave that flap as is. So I have a bunch of papers, encyclopedia papers from a 1880s encyclopedia that I pulled out all naturalist type of things. And then I have my favorite paper, the Athenaeum. And this one has an article or a review of Charles Darwin's latest book. And it says the big word science at the top. And I'm like, that's the ticket. That's the one I want on this box. It's nature, it's science. Darwin's kind of a cool little touch. And this paper's from 1901. So it definitely is going to lend itself to that vintage vibe. I absolutely love this paper. I use it everywhere. You know, I bought it at auction, this big book of it. And when I run out, I am going to be crying. So now I'm just going to put the Fabri-Tac down. And I am going to lay this paper on top and just start lining the box. And really all you're going to see is me taking the printed paper and putting it on the box, like wrapping a beautiful present, right? Putting some edges over on to the one side, trimming others, just making it neat and tidy, making it interesting, very junk journal style with the ripped paper and inking. Nothing I'm doing is that, difficult. It's just a matter of covering the outside with pretty paper. So I realize I do not need to put a hole on the bottom sheet of paper because the bottom hole is just a resting hole on the inside. So the outside does not need to have a hole in it, which makes it a lot easier. And I just have to cut a piece of paper the size of the bottom and glue it on. Just really easy peasy and very straightforward. So that's what you're seeing me do now. Put some glue down and get that in place. Okay. Easy peasy. Now we're going to finish the side. Just glue down that little flap. We are covered pretty much all around and just doing the final trimming. And as you can see, we've finished up the outside of the box. It's completely covered, all the sides and the back. I think it looks great. And now we need to concentrate on the inside, which is really the fun part. So before I fill the center, I want to show you some of the choices I've made, because I have to then figure out what I'm going to do on the bottom and the sides. I have this Vials book that I have gutted, and I've harvested some art out of it. If you don't know what book harvesting is, I have a video from last year, and my friend Sharon took my book harvest challenge and used Vials, and I couldn't believe the things she got out of it. So I really wanted that book, and I purchased it for like, I don't know, $2 at a flea market. And I got this piece out of it, and it has September on it, which is when I'm making this project. I really liked that in the background. And I felt like this paper is a nice reoccurring piece from here. It has this leaf and a September. And then if I put the mushrooms in, I like how you can see the leaf on one side, You can see part of the date, you can see the writing. So I feel like if I put prints in, that's going to be too busy. I feel like it needs to be a pattern paper, or it needs to be something very simple, like just a dark color. I think I might do the dark color just on top. So let's see if I can do that first. This obviously won't be this bottom piece here. I do need to cut a circle out of it because that's where it rests. And that's going to work out really good because this is the size, and as you know, these paper cutters don't go in very far. That is exactly right. That's exactly right. And what I can do is, where's the little hole it punched? See the little hole? I can stick that little hole. Let's put a little dab of glue in there. I don't know if you can see that little dab of glue. I'm going to just stick that hole that it punched out, and I'm going to stick that on top. So when I put the paper in, all I'm gonna see is the pattern underneath. Do you see that? So let me glue this in. That will make it better. That fits perfect. Okay, so now I need to do the top piece. And as we saw, we needed the 1-inch hole. I've decided to go with a very plain piece of paper that has a nice color to it that reflects my project. And I'm just going to trace the dimensions, you know, the width of the box, and then cut it on my paper cutter. And my thought is this will be long enough for me to fold it in a way that it covers both sides and the top, all in one piece, which will make my life a lot easier. And I'd rather take a very plain piece of paper and then decorate it than have a pattern in there. So I'm now going to just take this piece of paper and awkwardly fold it so that it fits in my box properly. And then I can cut the hole that the test tube goes in from there and then decorate it. So if I slide this in, that is where the hole needs to be. You see, it just doesn't make it right. What is the chance of me lining this up correctly, people? I don't know. Find out. All right, it's not 100% perfect, but it's pretty good. Let's turn it around and see if that's any better. That is better. Okay, that's going to be good enough. I think that's actually pretty good. But here's the thing, I won't be able to decorate it once it's in there, so I really kind of need to decorate it beforehand. So let's get that leaf piece, put it in there like that. Let me trim this so it's not distracting me. And then I need a little piece of, maybe I can find some writing from that same book. I can do the bottom after. All right, so I think I need a few pretty things. I need a few light pieces of ephemera. And I need to remember that the white smudge goes in the back. So let's see what I can put on here. Okay, so this was the fun part, or part of the fun part for me. Not that it wasn't fun so far, but I love the decorating part. It's always my favorite. So as you could see from my prior video, I had taken Tim Holtz Specimen stamps, and I had stamped a whole bunch of them and cut them out, fussy cut them out. I also did the same with a bunch of mushroom stamps I had, and I had that new digital that I had created for this project, which is in my shop if you're interested. And I had fussy cut tons of those out as well. And my thinking is this color is very plain. This red goes with the red of the mushrooms. And what I want to do is get that feeling of field labels and specimens and tiny bits of ephemera, maybe some postage stamps. I want it to be decorated, but I don't want it to be overly decorated. So I'm going to start just picking labels, field labels, specimen labels, postage stamps. The digital that I made features labels that were on microscope slides from the Victorian period. They were also things like herbarium and field note slides. When a scientist prepared a slide or a specimen, they had their own little label of the person's name who prepared it. So I have some of those in there. I have some numbers. So I'm just looking at trying to add to the inside pieces some interest, some things that are very synonymous with specimens and natural history and all of that kind of thing. I just love it. I'm just such a nature freak, and I love the Victorian era, and I love paper, and I love clay, and this project is everything I love in one place. So just having really a lot of fun. So now I'm going to take this stamp that has script on it, and I'm just taking the black archival ink and coming in here and there with a little bit of that writing for the background. Again, just adding a little interest, adding a few more layers, just decorating this paper so that it really has that junk journaling feel we love, except in an a altered piece, a mixed media piece. I think they call it assemblage. So, it's just for me taking those skills that I love and have learned in junk journaling and taking them into a 3D piece, which is just so much fun. I love jumping back and forth between making journals and making pieces like this. And now I'm just going to try it in the box to make sure I like it and do the last final decorations. I have a stamp. Obviously, you see me putting a little bit more script in, but I also have a really cool stamp that makes like splatter marks, and gosh, that really comes in handy. And I add some of those as well. I'm inking the outside of the paper because I don't want to see that white edge when I place it inside the box. So I'm dulling down that bright white. Even though I thought I measured perfectly, there's a little gap there. But it looks really clean everywhere else, and that I am so grateful for, because that's a lot of precision there, and that is a big challenge for me. Big challenge. And this lip isn't too much of a problem because whatever's here is going to have to fold up. So I'm thinking it might just be a little piece of paper, like maybe something like this that's got a really small font to it. I'm just going to rip it to size, ink it up, glue it in, and now we're done. Okay, so now I'm going to glue that September 3rd or 13th piece of paper that I got from the fairy journal in the back. I'm going to edge it with some ink so it stands out a little bit in the background. And then I'm just going to glue it and place it inside. Okay, so now that the background paper is inside, I want to add just a couple more small details that'll really pull the whole thing together. I want to add a couple small pieces of ephemera, 2 postage stamps, one green, one red. France and the United States is what I've chosen, and I like them because they're old and they fit in with the rest of the ephemera, and they tie the colors in, and it makes all 3 of the inside pieces, really coordinate with that junk journal ephemera style. So now I'm going to slide in my test tube, and I love it, and I think it looks really, really good. But now I need to work on the test tube itself. It's time for me to decide on the label and do some of the wax work on it. So I've set up my little wax burner on a candle, and I'm choosing I'm going to choose some bronze wax to cover the white wax that I initially put on it, because I just think that'll look a lot better with this project. Luckily, the first layer of wax I put on was so thin it doesn't really matter. I've cut a very thin slice of that encyclopedia paper, and I like that it has like some chemical, reference on it, so it's very sciencey. And I'm just going to wrap the top portion of the test tube, and this portion is the top that's going to poke out of the box. So I think that'll look really neat, and will separate the top from the bottom. I'm just gluing that on with a little bit of glue, wrapping it around. And now I'm going to put some twine on the cap. I open the cap and actually lodge the twine inside the test tube. And I do this because I want to hang a label off of it afterwards, and that makes it very secure. So I'll put a little Fabri-Tac glue on the glass, because it is glass and I want it to be permanent. And then I will wrap the twine as neat as I possibly can around the top of the test tube, and then I will secure it with a knot and then just trim it. It's really easy to do, and this kind of work is just super fun for me. The decorating and the attending to the little details, that really, floats my boat. So I'm just securing the twine, as I said. Now I'm stirring up the wax. It's not melting that good because the candle's a little far, the flame's a little far from the bottom of the spoon, so I'm just going to finish up there. I'm going to add the little label that is from the person who prepared the test tube, and this is an actual label from a microscope slide, but I love this. It makes it look like somebody prepared it and then labeled their preparation of their specimen. And then I'm going to put the hot wax on the top. I have my fern wax seal, which I'm going to press down, and I'm going to try to do it as careful as I can and try to encourage some of that wax to come out the front. And then I will inspect it, and I love the little drip that comes down. And I think I will add a little bit more dripping to the front of the test tube with the remainder amount of wax that is in my spoon. I'm just trying to carefully guide it and make it come out the front. So now I'll just take a little bit of distress ink, and I'm making that paper a little less white, just adding some ink to it. And I'm even going to take my splatter stamp and add some splatters to it. Just again, paying attention to those tiny little details that are going to make it look old and grungy and really give the project its feel. And now let's slip it in and see how it looks. It looks great, and it fits, and I love how it looks. And now I just want to make that label on the top. I want to have a hanging tag that comes off of the top of the box that will link the top of the test tube down, will lead your eye down into the box showing the rest of the test tube. So I'm going to use a couple of the stamped specimen stamps that I used from Tim Holtz for this label, and I'm going to grab an old vintage tag that has a vintage reinforcer on it, and I'm going to make that into a smaller tag that I can hang off of this box. Obviously, this isn't the exact same tag as the one I showed because it's smaller. I mean, it's got a round reinforcer, but you get the idea. And now I'm taking a black Sharpie and I'm just making like stitch marks on it just to give it that extra little detail to make the stamp pop. You know, it's those little tiny things that sometimes can make a big visual impact on a project. And now I am just taking the tag, and I've replaced, just so you know, I've taken the original string off and replaced it with twine because I just think it goes better with the project. And I'm just trying to figure out how I'm going to hang it and how far down I want it. And I add just a teeny bit of glue on the box because I want the tag to hang just so that your eye follows the top to the tag and then the inside of the box. And now I'm just making those last minute adjustments. I'm adding one little stamp to the bottom, and I think it is done. I think I have finished it. I'm happy with it. I'm looking at all of it, just kind of making sure that it's exactly how I want it. And this is how it looks in natural light on the shelf. I absolutely love it. I love the top and the little chemical words, the stamping. I added some gilding wax to the top of that stamp to make the design show. I like how the label sits and all the little pieces and parts inside that give it that nature ephemera feel. I did not glue the test tube in. I like the fact that you can remove it, but it's also fairly secure because of the hole that it rests in the bottom. I hope you like this project as much as I loved making it. I have one more video in the series where I take this up a notch. So I hope you'll tune in for part 4 when it comes out. And I would love for you to like this video, to leave me feedback. It's been so much fun making this project, and I hope you enjoyed watching it. Thanks so much for your support and for watching. Until the next time, see you later.